the next subject we're going to talk about is a big recent innovation in the American consumer scene, ways of eating. It's so new that they're still debating what the proper name for this business is. So if anybody here thinks of the name, you should come up and seek out our panelists afterward and suggest it to them. It's variously called fast casual food, fast and fresh, quick casual, you sort of get the idea. It's new. It grew out of Americans' love for fast food on the one hand, and on the other hand, Americans' growing concern over the quality and sourcing of their food. It's, you know it here locally as the Mad Greens restaurant. I know it in New York City as Chipotle. There are other chains that have sprung up lately. But it's kind of taken the place of the kind of salad bar that you were a little sketchy about sometimes. And, it gives you consumer choice, it gives you quality food, and it's fast. So those are the promises that have been made. And we're going to explore some of the challenges and complexities of that business this morning, particularly the question of how big and how scalable this new trend in American eating is. So to give us the answers and to lead the discussion looking for them, I want to introduce Dave Kingsbury, who is Vice President of Partnership and Product Development for New Hope Natural Media.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Happy spring. Today is the first day of spring, despite the ice we scraped off our windshields this morning, going, really? I'm with New Hope Natural Media. We have been in the middle of the natural products business for about 40 years, so this is a topic near and dear to my heart. I'm going to bring my panelists up all together. Please, now, panelists, new friends, and let them introduce themselves. And we will move quickly. We have, over our coffee this morning, thank you very much. I'm not allowed to drink it at home, so yay. We came up with like 7 topics, and if we get through 2.5, I think we're going to be super stoked. I'm going to not be the dictator over here. So first, if you guys could just maybe start, Natalie, do a quick intro and just a little bit of background of how you got into what you're doing and what you're doing.
Really quickly, can you hear me? Yeah? Okay, I'm Natalie Condon, and my husband Jason and I own what we think of as a pretty small farm in Lafayette, Colorado, and what people in the Boulder County think of as a mid-sized farm. And by USDA standards, we're considered mid-sized at this point. 110-acre family farm. We're USDA organic certified. And we started our farm in 2005. We both still had full-time jobs. We actually, I see Adrian here, and were we the inaugural year of Building Farmers? Yeah, we formed our mission and vision statement in a CSU Ag Extension program. And we never thought we'd do anything more than farmers markets. We really just wanted to grow food. Like I said, we both had full-time jobs that kept us busy 60 to 70 hours a week. So I'd get up and harvest at 5 in the morning. We did a little roadside stand. We grew from a 1/4 acre to about 8 acres to, Jason likes big. So we went to 20, and now we're at 110. And I think our involvement in this fast and fresh industry, I'll just cut right to that chase, has grown now to where we have a 400-member CSA program. I imagine everybody here is familiar with CSA. And we distribute to a whole bunch of local restaurants. No fast and fresh restaurants, interestingly. No, not yet. But to the Potagers, the Big Red F's of the world. If you guys are familiar with Boulder County, Jack's, you guys have a Jack's up here. Kitchen, the kitchen, you guys have a kitchen. But we try to distribute 90% of what we grow within a 10-mile radius of where it's grown. So that's sort of our involvement in fast and fresh. We also, I think, kind of interesting and unique to our business model, and not, I would say, very economically viable for most farms, but this is sort of what we've built our farm on, is that we harvest to order. So we also distribute to Whole Foods and alfalfas, and people were sort of intrigued by that we could be a 110-acre farm and distribute twice a week to our wholesale customers. And we do distribute to between 18 and about 35 customers twice a week during the height of the growing season for about 5 months. And that includes the Whole Foods and Alfalfas of the world, door-to-door organics, I think some of you are familiar with, other supporters, true supporters of local ag. So that's sort of been, and then we have our farm store. And actually our farm store makes up the bulk of our business at this point. And that is open 6 days a week from May through December 23rd, and then just 4 days a week, January through that mid-May mark, whenever we start harvesting a lot of produce. Harvested and started selling the first of our spinach this week, which was really exciting. And yeah, and I think for us, you know, the notion that we harvest, so we receive our orders on a Sunday, we harvest on a Monday, and then we have a delivery service that delivers for us on a Tuesday. And that's how we do it. And we have our CSA pickups 3 days a week. Our CSA members come to us. We don't do the big distribution in a truck millions of miles away. They come to us, and we service those 400 members. Again, actually they're within a 2.5 to 4 mile radius of where our food is grown. So that's sort of our fast and fresh approach. And that's, I think, where I'll stick to it for now.
That's good.
Okay.
My name is Elizabeth Mozer. Yep, you can probably hear me now. And I have Loco Food Distribution, which we started in 2011, and we distribute locally grown and locally processed foods to restaurants, grocery stores, institutions, really any wholesale buyers along the Front Range. We're based here in Fort Collins, and we deliver from here all the way down to Colorado Springs. We carry products including seasonal produce, meats, cheese, grains, beans, grocery items, a whole lot of grocery items. So we're really looking at distributing and delivering year-round, and how do we connect the local food system, including folks who are making things, you know, processing things here with or without local ingredients, but local businesses, and how do we support them year-round. And so we have an online catalog of about 2,500 items. Obviously more during the growing season when there's a lot more in the way of produce. But we don't do produce year-round, except for some things that are grown here year-round, like mushrooms and some greenhouse or hydroponic or aquaponic lettuces and things like that. So we do, like I said, restaurants, grocery stores, and the institutions that we work with are primarily universities and hospitals. And then the grocery stores that we work with include some chains, like Whole Foods and Vitamin Cottage and Sprouts, and then a lot of independent grocery stores, including folks like Natalie and the Isabel Farms stand. So
We count on Loco.
yay.
Now, you started the farm like 9 years ago? More?
Is it 20, what year is it, 2015?
15?
Yeah, 10 years, I guess.
10
yeah.
years. And how old is Loco?
We're just turning 4.
Starting 4. Great. Okay, now we're moving up the supply chain as we go this way.
Very good. My name is Marley Hodgson. I'm a co-founder of Mad Greens. Eat Better is our tagline. My business partner, Dan Long, and I founded Mad Greens almost 11 years ago down in the southern metro area of Denver near Park Meadows. The reason we started Mad Greens was to be able to provide fast and fresh food to the general public, but importantly at a reasonable price. You know, one of the dreams we had and one of the things that we identified as we were starting Mad Greens was there was a lack of fresh, healthy, affordable food in the marketplace. We wanted to reach and touch as many people in the country, possibly elsewhere. And to do that, affordability was a big part of it. And that's a big part of the discussion we're going to have today, is how to keep it affordable, how to be able to provide a terrific, healthy, tasty, and that's obviously important as well, product to the public at an affordable price. So how do you keep the supply chain safe? How do you keep it intact and have integrity while still making it affordable? So Mad Greens has been about that since day one, and we're really proud. We have 12 restaurants up and down the Front Range. Today we're adding 12 more this year here in Colorado, Arizona, and Texas, and we have plans for 2 years out to go into additional markets as well. We're predominantly salads. We do other food as well. We do some soup, we do wraps, we do some paninis, but predominantly salads. That's where we make most of our money. We have a lot of customizable options. The public loves that. It's one of the things that is expected these days in our category, is to be able to get what you want, exactly what you want, which obviously throws in some operational issues as well. But that's Mad Greens in a nutshell.
Great.
Thanks, Marley. My name is Davy Noe, and I work for Shamrock Foods. I think what's important is Shamrock Foods didn't start as a food distribution company. We started as a dairy. 93 years ago, we're privately owned, privately held. 93 years ago, W.T. McClellan came over here as an Irish immigrant, went to, Tucson to start a dairy. Who would think they want to go to Tucson to start a dairy? He started it with 3 dairy cows, and his wife, Winifred, drove the truck. And that company started just like that, and now his son, Norman, who's 86, is still chairman of the board, and his son, Kent, is the CEO and president. So just like what you saw on the screen, Shamrock Foods is in their 3rd generation, and we're really proud of that and everything. So we started as a dairy and evolved into food service, which is great. And we took it from 3 cows and 1 truck to a $3 billion company right now. So we're really excited about that. I think our motto is we need to be big enough to be competitive, but small enough to care. And we're the go-between. We're the distributor and everything that goes to the customer and hopefully buys local when we can. We want to buy local whenever it's available, but we just distribute food, and we're kind of the go-between.
Awesome. And you've been there for 29 years.
29 years, yeah.
So I think we have some pretty cool perspectives on the evolution of this, people want healthier food. As Natalie and I don't know if you're in Boulder as well, but we've been in the Republic down south of here, Boulder, for a little while, for about 30 years. And I was telling these guys this morning when my 76-year-old dad in Florida says he and my mom are doing a cleanse, I go, you can spell cleanse? Like, do you even know what that is? So this mainstream of this stuff is why all these businesses are growing. So what I want to just ask across, and we don't have to go in order, but where do you guys see this in the evolution of, you're doubling your store count. That's indicative of growth. Where do you guys see this on the bell curve? And actually, Natalie, I'd love if you shared some of your farmers market comments of the drop off and that stuff.
I think for us, we started our business as a farmer's market farm, and I think people, who don't know much about ag don't know. Market farms, we grow 80 varieties of produce, which is pretty much insane by anybody's standards. It's just goofy, but you do that when you have a CSA and when you're a farmer's market farm. You have to have everything. Everybody wants you to have everything. They don't even understand that you can't grow mangoes here. They come into our store all the time. Do you have mangoes and lemons? I'm like, no. We only grow things that we only sell things that we grow. So anyway, when we started going to farmers markets, there was this diehard locavore contingent, and they would come and they would spend $50, $60 a week with us. They came specifically to our farm, and they would fight over the okra at 7:45, and they were really diehard. And we've seen, and we actually left farmers markets finally. This will be our 3rd year not going to a farmers market, which in Boulder is kind of not very cool for a farm. If you're an organic market farm, you better be at the farmers markets, and it was really scary to us. But we sort of found that our customer base was shifting, and it was becoming the mainstream Mad Greens person who did want mango and who did want the strangest of things and who didn't want to deal with the seasonality of our produce. And we couldn't count on them to come. If it rained, they didn't come. If it was hot, they didn't come. If it was windy, they didn't come. And we just sort of thought, like, wow, financially, this is not viable. Not the way we want to do it, not at the level we want to be selling, not the quality we want to be selling. So we finally decided, wow, we really need to do this farm store thing. Like, we need to have a place where people can come to us all the time, the ones who really, really want to support local. And just, talk about, I don't have an MBA. My husband doesn't have an MBA. We're just kind of crazy. And we would just sort of keep shifting our business model based on what probably is pretty sound decision making. And also, I think the other thing is, so we saw our customer base just change, which is really interesting because I think then at Marley's end, he has benefited from where farmers market farmers have kind of not benefited, the mainstreaming of this fast and fresh. So you don't have these diehards anymore doing it that way. They've shifted to CSA. They're really coming to us. Our CSA members are now our farmers market customers.
Yeah, just to sort of follow on what Natalie said, 11 years ago or 10 and a half years ago when we started Mad Greens, it was a very small contingent of our customer base that was demanding local or even organic and some of the other terms you hear. Nowadays, it's changed. I wouldn't say maybe it's a majority, but it's coming close to being a majority now, where people, it's an expectation rather than a luxury. So when we do local products, we see not only huge sell-through, but we also see people's willingness to pay more, which is something we didn't see probably as early as 5 or 6 years ago. So I think
And your best margin salad that you were discussing this morning is the Alfred Packer,
It
which
is.
ironic, funny.
the joke is he ate locally. But,
Right, he ate locally.
Yeah,
He was the first locavore, right?
Yeah, exactly. You can always tell which customers get it.
Yeah, right.
Sort of chuckle
People like,
along, yeah.
And people are willing to pay a premium.
To some degree. I mean, there's definitely a limit, but they are.
Yeah. So any other, so how big is this thing, and how you're doubling your store size? You probably see, in your distribution, the growth. Are we, and I can't quantify this, but are we halfway there? Is it 30% of the population? Like where's it gonna go?
My personal opinion on that, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I think it really depends on whether some of these big gaps are solved, and distribution being one of them. I know Dave can talk a lot about that, but it's something we've run up against right now. We're in sort of that weird phase where we're not small anymore, where we're nimble. We have to provide consistency. We don't have a huge sourcing division. At some point we will, but we don't yet. And we're not quite big enough to necessarily go and take the large farms and say we're going to take your entire product or your entire production. So we're in this weird phase. So I think it depends on whether some of these loopholes or not loopholes, but these gaps get solved for.
So what are some of the gaps? So sourcing, volume, what are some of the challenges?
Well, you want to list a few? Go ahead.
Well, I think the challenge is, we said it earlier, is how does Marley get scalability without losing the footprint of local and everything? So if he goes from 14 restaurants to 50, can we fulfill his needs with local product if that's his footprint and how he developed it? And I think that's a very big challenge. I think the other challenge that I hopefully talked about in the last 3 days is food safety. That's our number one priority as a distributor, is food safety. Nothing but that and everything, and that's not breaking the cold chain. When you grow a product and it's a certain temperature, we're gonna make sure we receive it at that temperature, we store it at that temperature, it gets on the truck at that temperature, and then gets into the customer at that temperature. And we can't break that cold chain. That is so important right now for distribution, is food safety and everything. So I don't know whether I answered your question there, but.
Yeah, but I think what's interesting is, and scalability already came up earlier this morning. What is standing between, and you're probably a great example of, you guys are sort of hiccuping up, right? From 8 to 110, which I'm sure was more like this. And as you're doubling in size, what are the things, because I think everybody here wouldn't it be cool if everybody could eat locally sourced, completely safe food at a reasonable price? But it's like a thing we say in the bike business, you can have it cheap, light, or fast. Pick two.
And that's basically the way it is in our
yeah.
industry. I mean, when you think about it, I was mentioning earlier when we were talking about this, for us, produce is center of the plate. But that's rare in the restaurant business. Most of the time, it's especially in this country, it's protein. And so produce is somewhat ancillary to a lot of restaurants purchasing on a daily basis. I mean, it is important to them, but they don't do enough of it in any one particular area to make it something that they're going to spend a ton of time on. Whereas for us, it's important for us to go see the farms, to make sure that they're safe, to make sure that we have an understanding of our supply chain. It's worth it for us to go out there and identify who's doing it, who has the proper safety measures in place. Where can we actually find a reliable source of local? Whereas a lot of other folks, it's like, you know what? I'm going to do that with my beef. I'm going to do that with my chicken, perhaps, or fish, or whatever it might be, depending on where you are in the country. But for produce, it doesn't necessarily get to that point. So I think that's where it's difficult. I mean, in distribution, whether it's dealing with the local side specifically, or whether it's large regional distributors like Shamrock, that is I think one of the keys is how do you solve for? I mean, I think Liz would probably speak to this, but solving for serving the smaller local producers, bringing them into single, and I don't want to say small customers, because not all your customers are small. Like institutions like CSU, for example, are large, but it's a single source, just a single area. For us, we're dealing with getting that product from Natalie or Petrarca or whomever it is, and then we need to get it out to 12, 15, 16, by the end of this year, 18 restaurants in Colorado. And so there's this pinch point with the distribution, and how do you do that efficiently from an economic standpoint?
Well, and listening to what you were saying, how many products? 2,500? So that gives me a headache just thinking about it,
But
We have
it's nothing.
16,000.
Yeah, it's nothing.
but you're
compared
like
to what he
huge,
has.
right? So you're,
I don't want 16,000. I'd rather have 2,500. Yeah.
But so on a scale, like how does that work?
Yep. Well, we fortunately have great software. That's a large part of it. But a lot of what we do, as far as when people are talking about the seasonal produce, we're learning every year. Like I said, we've just done 4 years, and so since produce is seasonal for us, what we work for each year is figuring out how to pair specific growers to specific customers. And so a lot of times we pair some of our smaller vendors to smaller customers, and then try to kind of go up from there. This year we're trying to get, Isabel and Fossil Creek, which is a smaller farm here in Fort Collins, into Tony's Markets, which is a series of grocery stores in Denver, and the Bon Appetit group of restaurant management groups. And so really it's a matter of pairing like-sized vendors with like-sized customers, but also having enough vendors so that when there's a gap, when something happens, there's that reliability. Because it makes a lot of sense in a lot of cases for our vendors to go direct, and it works really well for them. But sometimes it's useful for a customer to be able to have the reliability of a distributor that can then pull from somebody else, that can make sure that we can aggregate products from more than one farm to make sure that that reliability is there. And so still figuring that out every year is lots of fun, especially as we're growing every year. It's different every year. But we've been focusing more on the things that are going to be available to us year-round while relearning produce every year.
I'll just add one thing. When you look at fast casual as a niche or a quick casual or fast fresh, however you want to define it, one of the things, so it wasn't just about getting healthy, fresh food to the customer. It was also about convenience. It sort of grew out of QSR, and it also grew out of the casual dinings of the world not being able to service and becoming dinosaurs. They have huge footprints from an overhead standpoint, 4,000 to 8,000 square foot restaurants. Well, that's a lot of overhead. It's a lot of cost. People had to come sit down for an hour to an hour and 15 minutes to get a meal. They dealt with servers. They had to deal with tipping. And those restaurants hadn't innovated for a long time. And so there was this huge gap. Well, one of the things that fast casual did is they downsized their footprint. Typical fast casual restaurants anywhere from 1,600 square feet to 3,000 at most. And so with that, we've also shrunken the systems that are in place in the restaurant. So we don't have a sous chef, for example, whose responsibility it is to check in multiple orders from multiple distributors multiple times a day. We have one general manager. It's their responsibility to make sure that the order's coming in. So the more distribution points we take on, the more complex it is, the harder it is to receive that product, the harder it is to make sure it's good. And that just brings in more costs. So it's always this tipping, or this sort of conundrum of, well, how do you keep it cheap? And part of it is simplicity. And so we have customers that say, well, why don't you just, have somebody go out to the farms every day, or why don't you just, have them, each one of these farms delivered to you? It's really not that simple. I wish it was, and for some restaurants, in some parts of the restaurant industry, it is that simple. They have forage, and high end, they even have foragers now.
Right. Go out and find stuff.
Go out and find stuff.
That's
And
an official
wonderful.
title at Whole Foods, right?
Yeah, it is.
I mean,
we don't have that luxury. I mean,
Right.
I guess we do. Maybe call it a little different, but that's Dan or I.
so a question to you, who are, I think, by far the largest business up here, and I'm not, not good or bad, but what have you seen in 30 years? 30 years ago, this part of the business, I'm assuming, has grown significantly over the last, and you tell me, decade, less, more?
Oh, the last decade, it's grown, and it's people are aware of health. I mean, a lot more than they have been in the past and everything. And from our standpoint, we got to bring in more products, healthier products, organic products and everything, and we see that more and more with our customers. But this fast casual, like Marley's saying, it's going. I mean, it's Mad Greens, it's Mod Market, it's Tokyo Joe's. It's because, exactly what Marley said, people don't want to spend the time for an hour and a half anymore. But they want to get a quality product at the right price and everything. So I think it's going to just explode. I really do. And my hat's off to Marley because he's ahead of it.
Right.
And the companies that are ahead of it are really going to explode. And we see that.
How have you guys had to change what is sort of a legacy business, 93 years, Winifred and the cows, How are you gonna? How have you had to tweak the business to service? Because another question, we talked about this very briefly this morning, but there's the ginormous companies are not set up to service the small companies from a supply standpoint. They're just not built that way physically. So how do we leapfrog this? And I think we're kind of watching Whole Foods do this nationally right now, and we'll see. Whole Foods is a touchy topic for a lot of people, but as they add 380 stores this year in Detroit, in Harlem, what's going to happen? Are they going to implode, or are we going to see this sort of, Portlandia, Brooklyn, Boulder resurrection thing all over the country? I don't know. It's
Well, one of our goals is, as Marley pointed out, is to drive cost out of our value stream. And that's what we have to do as a distributor, is drive our costs down. Like Marley said, if you add complexity, it adds cost. We want to be as simple as possible as we go through the whole value stream of food service. And if we can get that simplicity and we can drive cost out, and that goes from the farmer to the table. That's our job, is to drive cost out so that the cost doesn't go that far, because as you get scalability, your costs have to go. But basically what I'm saying is I'm not saying priced, I'm saying cost, because that could be a lot of different areas. We got to become more efficient and drive waste out. Something that we do as an organization is business process improvement, where we focus on the process and we say, okay, what is wasteful right now? And how can we drive cost out? Because every time we touch a case, it costs money.
Right.
And we touch it a lot, too many times. And that's our job for our customers. And also we work with vendors on that. And we have technology, as you said, and everything. And we're using all these things to get scalability, because we need to get scalability too.
To serve the growing
yeah,
market.
because we're growing, and we have a distribution center in Colorado, New Mexico, Arizona, and we just are in Southern California. We're in Northern California, and we're going to Portland. So we are the Western United States now, and we're growing. And we got to grow our footprint, but at the same time, we got to be more efficient at what we do. And that's where Marley said, little things like we do night deliveries. So the product is already there for his managers when they come in, and our drivers know this goes in the cooler, this goes in the dry, this goes in the frozen, so it's already there. We want to deliver at night when nobody's out there,
right,
and everything, and that helps us.
Well, that brings up a good point. I mean, on one end we have a farmer, producer, and on the other side we have two distributors, and of course the sort of the end of the food chain, if you will, in Mad Greens. But it's like, who's good at what, and how do you marry everybody up? Because what he just brought up is an important point, and not a lot of consumers think about it, but I was in a restaurant, I won't name it, just yesterday, and they were getting delivered, and it was a place that was predominantly lunch. They were getting deliveries from their distributor, it wasn't you, in the middle of the lunch.
It's coming in
and
through.
they didn't have a back door, so it was coming in the front door. I saw a little kid almost get run over, and it was a mayhem, and we can't have that, obviously. When we're doing 300 to 500 people in a course of 2.5 hours, the last thing we want is a distributor showing up in the middle of the day saying, all right, here's your delivery, and it's like, oh my God,
Right.
and go away, basically. And so, but farmers aren't set up to necessarily say, all right, yeah, we can go do key drops. I mean, so there's a lot of liability. These guys have, I probably shouldn't let too many things out of the bag.
No,
but
all our
they have the
drivers are
ability-
bonded.
Yeah, they're bonded. They come into our restaurants. We trust them. They put the stuff away where it's supposed to be, so we don't walk in the morning and find chicken or produce sitting out in the middle of the kitchen. It's in the walk-in where it's supposed to be. So, there's a lot of nuances. And so how do you get people in the right places along the value chain, along the supply chain? And importantly, back to the cost side of things, that's one of the biggest struggles, because when we started Mad Greens, and a lot of other fast casuals have the same idea, you want to provide to a lot of people. And in order to make a mark and to really, truly make local and fresh and to make a dent in this country's obesity issue, you have to be able to provide to the vast majority of the public. Not everybody is well educated and makes enough money to be able to pay a premium above what they would normally pay, or at least not much. Right. And so if you're not careful, you start to raise up that price point, and then you just negated what you're after.
So my question, Nat, actually to everybody, because I think it would be different things. Who, you talked a little bit about Chipotle, and I'd love to hear about that, but who do you guys look to for inspiration for who's doing it right? And here's our next we talked about stair step. Like, how do I jump to that next stair step?
For us, there are food hubs kind of starting up all over the country, and there's some interesting groups. The Wallace Center is doing a lot of work to combine, have combined events where they can meet with each other, kind of learn from each other, and have combined webinars where, there's kind of, learn, how do you learn from what other people are doing? Because in a lot of cases, we're kind of reinventing the wheel, looking to what, huge distribution is doing, what smaller, what individual farms are doing, and how do you combine it all to make it really work for smaller growers, and how do you make it so that you can support smaller producers and get them to market in a manner that is reliable, that is not too expensive, and that's consistent with just keeping it all straight and making sure, again, it's a food safety issue and making sure all that stuff is covered. And so looking towards the resources that are becoming more and more available out there. It's always kind of funny to me that I've been in business 4 years and I get calls a couple times a week from small distribution outfits across the country coming to me as a resource. So that's always kind of funny. I'm like, well, we're still learning a lot here. But there's a lot going on as far as trying to figure out how to localize a lot more of our food system and how do you do that well. So
That's next. Natalie, what's your next?
What's our next zig?
Yeah.
I wish there were some models that I can point to. I can think of like 3 or 4 farms that do
Local around here?
No, throughout the country that do local, organic, and I mean successfully. Like really, as far as I know, none of the market farms in Boulder County are killing it. I think most of them are maybe breaking even, maybe losing money, and maybe doing it as a sideline. And I'm sure Fort Collins is the same. We actually stand out as a model, which to me is always sort of amazing.
I mean, people come to Isabella and go,
All the
you guys
time.
are so cool, you're doing it right, what are you doing?
Yeah, like how are you doing what you do? Because we do the food safety compliant thing. I mean, you'd ask me about GPS technology. It's like we actually use it. Most small produce farms don't use it. It's very, and honestly, I chalk it up to a lot of luck and then a lot of attending events like this and talking to people and trying to figure out ways that we can work together to make things happen. It's just not, for us, our level of business is not a hugely economically viable. I think we can do it because we're in Boulder County. Like, as you alluded to before, we have the customer base. We have the support. We have, CSU. I can turn to the professors at CSU and ask them questions and say, okay, I'm applying for this grant. How do I do it? How do I navigate this whole procedure? It's not everywhere that you can do this. And unfortunately, the American consumer is not willing to pay the price of growing food. I mean, that's just a hard reality. You go to Europe, people pay 25 pounds for a pound of meat. They just do. And they'll pay $3 for a bunch of beets and go, yeah, I've grown beets, I've harvested beets, I get it. Here, people want to pay 99 cents for a bunch of kale. And yeah, if you're in Mexico and you're growing a bunch of kale and you're paying your worker $14 a day, not $14 an hour, to harvest for you and bunch, then you can sell it for 99 cents. So it's, you got to live in the right place. You got to be doing what we're doing in the right place. I don't actually think it's viable in most places. I'm really sorry to say.
Do you think it'll filter out slowly?
I think it'll have to because of climate change. I think for all the reasons that people don't want to face in this world, I think local food is going to become just a necessity.
Like the whole no water thing and.
Yeah, I think people are going to have to rely on their local food producers, but I think it's going to be one of those, all grown-ups here, right? Shit hits the fan, and the shit's going to hit the fan, and then people are going to have to start going, wow, I really want that food, and I'm willing to pay for it, because actually food's one of the few things you really need to survive, But I don't really think that economically at this point, I think we're here. I mean, I actually see the Whole Foods thing. I mean, because we sell to Whole Foods, I know now they're not, purely organic, and they've abandoned the whole local thing largely. I mean, that was like their mantra there for a few years, and now they're twin lining, And to see Whole Foods go the King Soopers route, so King Soopers buying more organic and selling the kale for 99 cents and the carrots for 90. You can't grow a bunch of carrots for 99 cents. You can't do it. Ethically, it's almost impossible unless you're monocropping. So if you want to be this biodiverse farm, you can't do it. But like I said, climate change, the economy, gas, all that sad stuff that's going on.
All right, what about you guys?
Force
And I want to leave us 5 minutes
No, go ahead.
for questions.
Yeah, I'll be quick. I mean, I think what Natalie just brought up is certainly concerning to us. I think, technology is going to play a big role. We've been exploring a lot of things. A few years ago, we explored the economic viability of container growing. Didn't work out the way we had hoped, but there's some new outfits looking at some things I won't really talk about now. I can't, but they're very interesting potentials to solve for some of the fact that, local food is great. We happen to be blessed to be in a state where there's a lot of availability, but that's not the case throughout the country. I will say there are chains that have done it well. Chipotle I've mentioned before. Obviously a well-beloved Colorado-based company. They back in the early days, they didn't have their Food with Integrity program. That wasn't, from day one. It took them a long time to get to that point. They only did it when they could certify their food chain. They knew it. They knew they had pork producers or enough of them to be able to go out and do that. And you'll notice recently, it didn't happen here in Colorado, but I was down in Texas and in Arizona recently, where you walked into a Chipotle and on the door was a big sign that said, "We're out of pork," because they had issues with their pork suppliers. And instead of saying, you know what, we're going to go and abandon our philosophies, they just took it off the menu. So, I think.
Which sort of portends your future, right?
Yeah.
Right.
It takes companies, though, it's true, though. They had to start here.
Yep.
And then once they made a ton of money, they were able to actually
Yep.
invest in this mission-based and
Exactly.
really stick to it. And it's not everybody who can do
Right.
that.
And it's not easy. I'll tell you, in the beginning, people came to us and, why aren't you 100% organic? Why aren't you 100% local? And I wanted to engage in long conversations, but it's simply, look, we want to get to scale. And in order to get to scale, we got to keep our price down. As we grow, we will add more and more capabilities to do it, where we can go and, I know you mentioned monocropping, but to go to a farmer and say, we will commit to buying your entire or 50% of your product or whatever it happens to be for this specific time. We're going to buy it no matter what. And it's hard to do that when you're smaller. So I think the companies like Chipotle have proven that in fast casual, you can do that because their price point's still low. Right. Beans and rice are a little different than produce. Well, it is produce to some degree, but then leafy greens and some other things that you're looking at, it's obviously more expensive. But I think there are some shining examples. Whole Foods is an interesting conundrum, and I know it's, as they grow at the rate they're growing, it's going to be really interesting to see how they have to deal with their supply chain.
Yeah. I'm going to comment a different way, if that's okay, Dave.
Absolutely.
Well, when they bring up Chipotle, it's kind of interesting because this is where I see you, Natalie, going with Whole Foods, because we started with Chipotle, the first one down in Evans, with Steve Ells.
Yep.
He's a good friend of mine, and we grew him till 26, and then I get the phone call. And he goes, Dave, I hate this phone call. You guys have helped us grow and everything, but we're partnering up with McDonald's. And I said, Steve, I knew this was coming. Don't worry about it. But we were in the same boat you were, because it was like, okay, we're taking this national. It's more real estate and everything. And at that time, Shamrock couldn't give them that national coverage and everything. And so I understood it. But we grew them to 26, and then they went away and everything. And I see where you're going with Whole Foods now is like, well, I helped you get there, and now kind of cutting me out a little bit. But I'm not really answering your question. But I think from Shamrock's standpoint, it's what I said earlier. We want to be big enough to be competitive, but small enough to care. We can never forget where we came from. The dairy, the farm. We took care of people, and we got to continue to take care of people. And we're kind of in the middle, but we listen to our customers. What can we do to help you? What can we do to be a partner with you and everything? And that's what we do from a distribution standpoint, is just listen to our customers. Because with Chipotle, when they reach that level, it's easy for us as a distribution center, because Steve comes to me and goes, this is the farm you're going to go get it from, and we just set up all the logistics. That's easy. Marley will get there someday. I know he will and everything. And
We're already doing a lot of
I know. He's doing some of that. But it's easier as a distributor then. You know what I mean? Because we're not trying to go out and source it the best way. And we encourage this in our meetings. We say to our customers, go to you people. Go to the locals. Work out a deal. We're just distribution, and everything. And ours is more safety and cold chain more than anything else.
Great.
I just want to clarify.
Yep.
Whole Foods, still a great business partner of ours.
I didn't mean
if
to
I
say
said
that. I'm sorry.
They're just going to have to change their model significantly, and they're evolving, I think, with the consumer. That's all I want to point out, was the consumer.
Well, they're
is-
evolving so in the public eye.
Right.
Right.
That it's so, I just think it was Fortune, I think, like 4 months ago had, Whole Foods is taking over America. So I just think it's very interesting. So we got a couple of minutes for questions. Does anybody want to ask these smart people things? Sir. Young man.
Yes, good morning, everyone. So where do we see tower farming or greenhouse farming? Is that going to really, for someone like Marley and, both of the of the other companies there to the right. Where is that going? Will that help scale? I mean, as a small farm, have you thought about that?
We have, actually. I mean, we see that as a, just part, it's an inevitable part of our future. We're going to have to evolve with the climate and with, you know, and we know that. So we're you know, in the process of transitioning to some greenhouse production. That's our goal for the next 2 years. And then tower farming is very intriguing to me. Within Boulder County, we probably couldn't pull it off because we have height restrictions. So we can't do what you see those amazing lettuce farms on YouTube do. But, you know, and we, again, try to grow within a 5-mile radius. Like all our farms are within a 5-mile radius of home, literally. But yeah, we'll definitely have to go indoors. I mean, the climate's going to mandate it, and then year-round need is going to mandate it.
Yeah, year-round need. I mean, it's interesting. Consumers, as probably most of you know, they don't understand that stuff. There's seasons.
Mangoes. Why don't you have mangoes?
Yeah,
It's February.
when people come into our restaurant and they wonder why we don't have local romaine or leafy greens in December, and you know, without being rude, you try to say, well, if we did, it would cost 5 times as much as what you're paying because, you know, that type of production is expensive. Well, the exciting thing for us is we've been constantly trying to partner with folks and testing stuff out over the years, and we're starting to see the costs come down. We're talking to somebody right now, can't disclose who it is, but they're going to be potentially, and the potential is, we haven't verified this yet, but to provide half of our leafy green needs in the wintertime at a price that we think we can swallow. And so that, even 3 years ago when we tested something here locally in Commerce City that was grown out of shipping containers, we did it for our local salad, and we were just like, they had to sell it to us at a loss. We had to raise our prices to sell it by 20%. It was like, this isn't sustainable. Right. So we agreed to go our own way. Now it's starting, the gap's starting to close. So I think technology may help to solve some of it.
Good.
And we're already starting to work with some of those small greenhouse growers out of aquaponics and hydroponics both. And they're starting to come along, they're starting to grow, but they all start really small, which is, again, you know, that issue of scalability and price. And so typically we pair them with folks with smaller volume of those things so they can feature them, but it's not a huge loss because it's like, it's not the front of their plate. And so we're starting to see more of that. We're starting to hear from more folks who are like, now, if I grew this, would you distribute it for me? And I'm like, yes. So we're starting to see more of it. I imagine it'll take time for those to actually establish and actually happen. But yes, I do see that coming.
Cool. Our bomb timer just went off, so thank you, everybody, and enjoy the day.